Hey, this is Phil. I want to talk to you guys about vector shapes in Photoshop, and specifically I want to talk about how you can combine multiple vector shapes into a single vector layer. This is something I discovered a couple years ago, and it just had eluded me for a long time, and when I found it, it was probably the greatest tip I learned that entire year, and I've used it ever since, and it's become very, very valuable to me. But first, let me dive into how this works, and then I'll show you a couple of examples of how I incorporate this into my work. So we'll start here just by drawing a simple vector shape. So we'll start with a circle. And I've created this layer here. You can see it's just a single circle here in this in my layer palette. But say I wanted to add another shape to this. Now I could draw another layer and just continue to add layer upon layer upon layer. But what's cool is you can actually add multiple shapes to a layer, and this kind of reduces a lot of the stuff you see in your layer palette. You don't have just repeated elements throughout, and it also gives you a lot of other options. So if I hold down the Shift key, I get this little plus, and I can now drag another circle. What this has done is it's added the second one to this layer, and what this is here is actually a vector mask. And so you can have a lot of, I guess infinite number of vector shapes in this vector mask. And what's cool is I can come in and, I can change the color of this. So I can make this, any color I'd like, and it's applying it to all the shapes here. And what's also great, if I select my arrow tool, is these are independent shapes. I can drag these around and edit these individually, but they're still being combined in a single layer. So again, I can change the Bezier points. I can do what I'd like. I can also do some simple pathfinder tools here. So if I wanted to make these, or if I wanted to punch out the middle, or just keep the intersection part, or minus the front, whatever. Or even if I wanted to combine them, I can do that, and now this is just a single shape. So let me undo that. One thing you can also do is say you had a separate layer with another vector shape. So let me draw a square. So I've created a new layer. Let me draw a rectangle up here. This is on its own layer, but what if I wanted to have this be part of the layer with the two circles? Well, easy enough. I can select the rectangle by using the black arrow tool here. You don't want to use the move tool, it's only the black arrow which actually selects the shape. And if I hit Command C, which is copy, and then come down here, and I have to select the actual vector mask. It's real important that you always are selecting this part of your layer so you can actually edit and interact with those. With that selected, I can hit Command V, which pastes, and I'll turn off this top layer. And this rectangle is now part of the circle. So again, changing color, you'll see everything's getting affected. So this is really cool. It gives you a lot of flexibility. You can do a lot with it. If you were had a separate layer that maybe had a logo or something, a very complex piece of vector art, being able to copy and paste that into a layer instead of having to redraw it or whatever is really helpful. So let me go through a couple of examples as to how I use this. So I can take this double pinstripe here. These are actually two single pixel high rectangles that I drew out, and I have them on the same layer. So again, I can edit their color, but if I wanted to change the shape of these, I can just grab the open white arrow. I don't know the technical names for these things, but this is the direct selection tool. And I can drag the endpoints here and drag this around and change the width. I can grab these points here, and using the keyboard I can change the shape as much as I'd like. Move it around. I could draw these with the pencil tool. I could get out the pencil tool and grab like a 1 pixel brush and actually draw these and make a bitmap. That's fine. You'll get the exact same effect, but you lose the ability to, if you wanted to add to that, you'd have to, do all sorts of mask, copying or duplicating layers. And if you wanted to change the color, you'd have to, select those pixels and fill it with a color, or you would have to apply a color overlay. And I just like the ability that I can come over here to the layer, I can double click and go in and change the color easily. Here's a dash line. This may be a little obsessive, but sometimes I've done this before, and I've this is a bunch of different little rectangles here making up a dash line. Again, I can change color, shape, do whatever I want. Here's a grid. So I've got 8 rounded rectangles here, and again, these are all individual shapes. So you can see I can select them, move them around, change their shape, do what I'd like. But what I'm showing you here is that I've actually got a layer style applied. And right now I'm just doing a drop shadow and a simple outer glow. And it's applying that to every single one of these shapes. Now, you could imagine if I had 8 different layers and I wanted that effect applied, I'd have to paste that on 8 different layers. And if I wanted to change that, then I have to go through and edit one and then copy and paste, and it just becomes a pain. So the fact that I've only got this in one area, I change it once and it applies it to all of them. And this is a grid, but this could be 10, 20 different shapes across your document. If you wanted to have the same layer style applied, it could be in a bunch of different locations, and just changing it once that applies everywhere saves you a lot of time. So let me show you some icons. These are the icons I did for Method and Craft. And again, I could have drawn these using a pencil brush, but I went ahead and made these vector. I think I just got into the mode of doing it, and again, you could do these easily with a pencil brush, but I like the fact that they're editable. Again, the fact that I can double click on a layer, change the color, is really, really helpful. But let me show you how these are made up. So here's the all or everything icon. You can see here that these are a bunch of individual shapes. This one here on top is a rectangle with an inner rectangle, and I'm using the, I guess it's the, let me see, exclude overlapping shape areas, or basically just punching a hole in it. So that's the operation I'm doing there. Let me show you the article icon. Again, kind of a similar thing going here with the background. I've got a bunch of individual shapes here, making up a bunch of lines. I've got the interview icon. This little guy is made up of a bunch of different ones. I could have combined all of these and flattened them using the combine tool, but I like keeping them separate so I can have control in the future if I'd like. The video icon's got a lot more going on with it. So I've got, again, that back rectangle. These here are using that punching a hole button, whatever it's called. And same thing going on here with these little holes making up the film strip. For the notes icon, again, a lot of similar stuff going on. These actually here, and it's been on the same on the other icons. So I've got this back rectangle, I've got this rectangle punching a hole, and then if you apply another shape on top of that, it actually brings back, kind of does a double reverse basically. And if I were to drag this to the edge, you'd see that it's punching a hole where this intersects. So what you want to do is you just want to play with it. You want to see how these effects become applied and what different options you get out of them, and just experiment and see what you can create. That's it essentially. Again, I use these things all the time. Just the flexibility of being able to simply edit the colors, be able to paste vector shapes from one layer to the other, and to do a single layer style and have it applied across all without having to have multiple layers. And the fact that your layer menu, your layer palette doesn't get junked up with just duplicates of the same shape and you have like 20 or 30 layers. I mean, this thing could get really unruly depending upon what you're working on. It's really, really helpful just to have them all in a single layer. And again, it's a simple little tip, and whenever I learned it, it just really, really has saved me a lot of time. And I hope it's been valuable to you. Thanks.